let's go to Representative Wazlawik, and I wanted to talk a little bit with you about the PFAS problem. You've introduced some bills on that. That's an area of concern. Maybe you can talk about your background with that topic, and tell our viewers a little bit about what's going on there.
Sure. So this issue first came up, so sort of on the heels of the work that we did to ban TCE. So my first year in the legislature, we had, and I think we talked about this maybe when I was on the program before, but we had a company in my district that was using this toxic chemical, and we worked, I worked with Senator Chamberlain in the Senate to get a bill passed. I believe it was the 2020 session to ban TCE, and so the PFAS work kind of came after that. Representative Ann Claflin in the House. She was a former member. Had been working on that legislation, and so I just picked that up as something that needed a home, chief author, and as somebody who had been working on the issue of toxic chemical bans. I took up the PFAS and food packaging ban that passed in 2021. And then from there, continued conversations over the interim and sort of saw what other states were doing on the issue, and wanted to really take a sort of prevention approach. So the MPCA put out a PFAS blueprint last year, almost a year ago now, and it really laid out priorities for sort of monitoring and research and data gathering that we need, and then also legislation that would be helpful in sort of addressing this problem. And so one of the ways to address the problem that is a more cost-effective approach in terms of how we deal with these chemicals is really to prevent the chemicals from getting into landfills and the waste stream and our groundwater, where they can have potentially negative health and environmental impacts. So this session, I introduced three bills. Well, we have three major bills to ban PFAS in cookware, ski wax, and cosmetics. There's a few others floating around on juvenile products and apparel and furnishings and textiles. And so the goal is to try and prevent these things from getting into landfills and spreading the PFAS around through that process. And hopefully, saving the MPCA and taxpayers' resources, time and resources, financial resources on the back end with cleanup efforts.
Representative Igo, your thoughts on the PFAS issues?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've been having lots of conversation about PFAS, right? I mean, started last year, going into this year. The biggest part that when we're talking about PFAS, in my opinion, is making sure that when we're constructing legislation, that we're creating off-ramps that make sense for all businesses, right? I mean, it's one thing, and this kind of relates to most policy, right? We can't just come in right away and pass a law with a mandate. It'll bring supply chains to a halt. It could destroy businesses, destroy jobs. We need to make sure and work with all people who are at the table around this issue and find a common sense solution. I think that the key to the PFAS solution is making sure we have good off ramps to get off there. Because flicking the switch and turning something off isn't necessarily going to be the good thing for our supply chains. I mean, they're already struggling with what's going on around the globe and coming out of this pandemic. So that's my biggest thing with PFAS is that we're working to ban it, make sure it doesn't enter landfills and cost taxpayers more money. Not even that part, but making sure we keep Minnesotans healthy and the next generation healthy is creating off ramps so it works for all of us correctly.
Senator Putnam, your thoughts?
Oh, sure. This is my turn to say I'm grateful we have Senator Ruud here because she's going to be way smarter than I am about this one. But I can spell PFAS. Other than that, I had a conversation with a constituent today, actually, about this issue. And there are very few issues there's a few environmental issues that pop up with quite the same intensity in this area of St. Cloud. Clearly, people talk about climate and this concern or that, but PFAS is something that causes a real amount of anxiety and concern. So I'm grateful that we're addressing it, we're talking about it. The idea of a chemical that's basically permanent is kind of terrifying in a number of ways. But I agree that we have to be prudent and thoughtful in our ways of getting it out of our ecology as quickly as possible. Now I'm ready to learn from Senator Ruud.
Senator Ruud, we're all ready to learn from you. The floor is yours.
From me. Well, it's a really difficult subject, and we've done a lot of work on it. And the MPCA did put forth their blueprint, and it's available for anyone to read. And it really is interesting to see what's in our environment. But I think going forward, there's over 4,000 chemicals that are involved that are class of this chemical. And so I think they have a list, and there's over 6,000 things that the chemical is in. So it's really difficult to say we're going to ban these things. And some of the PFAS is not toxic. And so I don't think we know enough about this chemical to start banning things. Other states are looking at it. We have federal studies, but even California doesn't have a ban on the cookware. They have I think they have a warning label that they put on there. There's only about 3 states that are doing banning of cosmetics, and it's only 3 types of PFAS. So I don't really think that we know enough about this chemical to be banning things. And I think we have to let our manufacturers, they know that we have an issue, and I think we have to let them work it through. Quite a few years ago, we had an issue called microbeads, and microbeads were in toothpaste, they were in facial scrubs, and we found them, all of a sudden we found them in the Great Lakes. The whole probably 6 inches of the Great Lakes was microbeads. Where did they come from? Well, they came from these cosmetics. Well, the manufacturers, there's a Latin term for it, but the language says intentionally added, and none of them intentionally added this to harm the environment. So instead of banning that, we worked with the manufacturers and gave them a time frame and said, within this time frame, you need to find out something else in your cosmetics, in your products, and then not use the microbeads. And so that issue really has gone away. I'm sure that we're still dealing with some of the after effects of that, but I don't think you can just go in and as a legislator ban something. I want to make sure that we make good, solid decisions, that we make scientific decisions. I mean, we give manufacturers and businesses the ability to make the right decisions. And I believe they will. There's no one that intentionally wants to pollute our planet Earth. So I think banning them and legislatures making decisions on products and which one's a winner and which one's a loser, I'm just not there yet. And I think a lot of people, if you read the report and the blueprint for going forward from the MPCA, I think it gives us a clear path, and we'll get there.
If I can
All right.
respond to that, the report and the
Please do,
blueprint tell us
Representative
that.
Wazlawik.
Thank
Yes.
you. The report and the blueprint tell us that we should be working upstream, and these bills are a way to work upstream. And I also just want to point out that we don't have to wait for the feds. We can be a leader on this issue, and we should be a leader on this issue. This is, if folks have been paying attention to news in the past couple of years, 850 million 3M settlement on these chemicals, 12.5 million in Bemidji to pay for new wastewater infrastructure. This is costing taxpayers money. This is time and effort that the MPCA and agencies and attorneys and all these people have to spend on these chemicals and trying to get these chemicals out, and then installing filtration systems, and it's having a huge impact on our groundwater. And as we test more, as the MPCA implements their monitoring plan, we're going to find it everywhere. It's already been found in breast milk and rainwater and fish and deer meat and human blood and urine. It's everywhere. They don't go away, and we need to attack them now, and we need to do it. It's not a wait for the feds issue. I'm certainly more than happy to continue conversations about how we can do an off ramp. I think Representative Igo mentioned that is really important, and we've done that in past legislation with toxic chemicals. So happy to continue the conversation on that. But I think we can really be a leader in this. We don't have to wait for other states to act. We don't have to wait for the feds, and I hope we can take some action on that in this session, because it is really important that we get a handle on those chemicals.
And I would just say I'd really like to follow the science on this, and I don't think the science is there to ban things. And so, I know we have a different opinion there, but I'd really like to, if they're in everything, are you going to ban everything? I mean, at what point, and is there a stopping point on that? And so I think the research just isn't there yet, and being a leader on something is not always necessarily the way to go. I'd rather see someone else make the mistake and not make that mistake. So I'm not there yet, but I'm more than willing to look at all the research on it. I'm just not ready to ban with it being in so many products. I'm just not there yet.
Well, and I do want to point out that we're not banning it in all products. We're banning it in 3 specific types of products, and that's intentional. The state of Maine actually just banned all non-essential uses of PFAS starting in 2030. So they're taking a comprehensive approach, and we're actually not doing that intentionally because we wanna attack this problem in these three specific products because we do think it does take time to implement this, and we want to make sure we're able to do it in sort of an orderly manner and not necessarily having all these PFAS products being pulled off the market. So that is our intent here, to try and make that more focused.
I had a bill
Yeah.
introduced to my committee that's going to take it out of ski wax. And I'm going to tell you how much impact is taking PFAS out of ski wax going to have in the environment. Because I got to tell you, I don't see the impact in banning a product that has such little effect. And I think it's more of I would say a political statement than an actual something that does something and makes a difference. So,
Well, we'll have plenty more conversation about this, and I suspect we'll be hearing from both Senator Ruud and Representative Wazlawik as the weeks go ahead in the session, and I'm sure there will be differing approaches on this issue. Speaking of different